What's up, everybody? Let's get right into this week's video. So, since it's the last recording, I thought about what would be beneficial, what would actually be some good content value for you, and I started thinking it from the very basic point of what do what does everybody always ask me? What's the like number one question? And from there, I broke it down to most people ask me a series of questions, which pretty much leads up to the home buying process. So that's the topic for today's week. It's going to be the home buying process and things that you need to know. So, again, what I'm covering today is not going to be like what most people or what you've seen online go through. They give you either a graph or an info chart, small reels about little points of the home buying process. And I'm going to do that too. But I'm also going to let you know realistically what it looks like, what in real life happens. A lot of people always do all this research. They watch all these videos, they, read articles, and they hear other people's experience of how they bought the property, right? Well, there's a couple things there. So, one, when you hear about somebody else buying a home buying or, their home buying process, I will say it is, the same structure, the same framework, the sequence of events, but everybody's different, right? They got qualified for something else. They looked at a specific neighborhood. They went to a different, process because of that. So yes, it kind of went through the same steps, but it might not apply to you. And then also, with all the stuff that you see online, all the videos you keep, all the stuff you keep consuming in, right? That's, I think, with if you keep doing that, you're gonna go through analysis paralysis, and that eventually is gonna lead to you being stuck. Yes, you've read, you researched, you've done all this stuff, but the main reason for this video and the big picture takeaway, the message, right, is nothing is gonna happen until you take the first step. And I also wanna, preface this preface this saying I'm not here to rush you. I'm not here to put pressure, but I'm just letting you know no matter all the stuff that you read, all the stuff that you hear, all the stuff that you see, if you want to be a homeowner, it's not going to start without even taking the first steps. So, this video, I'm going to show you how the process works so you can understand it. So, once it happens, when you take step one, you're going to understand, and it's going to put you in a position a lot sooner for you to be a homeowner and put you in the position that you wanted to be than it was to never take that, first step. So let's go back to this PowerPoint. So step one looks a little different for a couple people, right? And this is important for you to know and be able to tell the difference. So some people talk to a loan officer first, and I'll let you know what the difference is. And some people start talking to a real estate agent first. Both, I want you to know, it's completely fine. There's nothing wrong with which one you start with. It's still step one, and in the end, it's still gonna lead to the same direction. At the end of the day, both loan officers and real estate agents are involved. So let me tell you how it's gonna look like if you go talk to a loan officer first. So loan officers usually focus on the numbers and income, credit, debts, and all those things, all the numbers, right? From there, once they kind of get that information, then they'll connect you to a recommended real estate agent that they work with. So then at that point, that's when the home search kind of starts. And that's pretty much step one if you ever start with your loan officer. And step two, or not step two, but step one slash, 1.2, 1 point B, whatever, is if you start to a real estate agent first, like myself, we focus more initially on the big picture first, right? So what does your timeline look like? Do you need to sell something first? What are you trying to accomplish? And with that, what I mean, for a few examples, is I have some clients that reached out and they mentioned my lease ends in like 4 months. I want to be in a house before or right at the time before that lease ends. So then there we have that timeline. Or why that's important too that we ask that first is because if you're an apartment, you're leasing out, you have that contract for that time frame. I asked you, hey, what's going on? Hey, are you renting right now or do you own? And that goes back to that point. You're like, oh yeah, okay, when's your lease over? Oh, in 2 months. I was like, okay, so are you trying to buy a house in the next 2 months, or you're looking a little longer? Because if you do, then you're gonna have to renew your lease in the meantime, or and then if you do, then you're gonna have to break that lease, and it's gonna cost some. So these are the big picture items that we think about to help you and guide you the right way, so you don't have to, hit those challenges along the way. But once I do that, once a real estate agent does that and asks all those big picture questions, then we connect you with a recommended lender. And it's like I said, everything is tailored to the person and their situation, their scenario. If I have a general buyer that doesn't qualify for the VA loan, I'm not gonna take him to a VA loan expert. Because some loan officers don't do other loans other than VA, and vice versa. Some other people don't do any VA because they just work with general people. Some people are more surrounded by military, active duty members, and veterans versus someone who doesn't, so they never really do it. And it's important because, yes, some people know a little bit of both, right? They can work both ways. But sometimes it helps when you work with a specialist because they know what's coming ahead. They know specific things that are required for that loan. And same with the real estate agent, right? So for myself, personally, once I understand what's going on, what you do, I then would recommend a lender for you, right? And again, I want to say this step one is not going to lock you into anything. Like you're not locked in. Don't be scared. I think that's what stops most people is that they go reach out to a lender or a loan officer or a real estate agent and they think it's like I'm locked in. I have to do it now. It's a big decision. I'm scared. No, it's all it is you get your information and then that step one is literally the biggest step that you can do because from there once we get that big picture idea, we can generally tell you what it is and give you all that information. But then once we move to step two, when we've answered it, we've answered all your questions, you feel, kind of warm and fuzzy, that rapport is built, the trust is built, that you know that we're looking out for your best intentions and we're trying to set you for success, is we go on to step two. And step two is getting the pre-approval done. Within this is where you figure out what you can actually do, your left and right lateral limits. Right here, you're gonna find out pre-qualified for, $700,000 for a home. So this is literally for you. Out of all those numbers that the loan officer ran, this is specifically for you and nobody else, right? So if you have a friend, if you have a family member, they got qualified for something less, something more, that's their case. This is where I mentioned like everybody's scenario is different, everybody's home buying process is different. And now that this pre-approval is done, you understand what the price range for you is. So you're not wasting any more time looking at houses on Zillow, Redfin that were, 850, 900, a million, whatever the case may be. And now you're looking intentionally at the 700 and below. And from there, then you start, then this is like what you understand what realistically you can do. And again, this first step in step one and step two is gonna set you apart from everybody else because most people don't even get to step one or step two. They're too scared. They feel, you know, maybe lost. They don't know what it is. But when you do step one and step two, now you know that you're heading in the right direction. You're not just blindly walking anywhere, I'm just gonna walk this way. Now you know like, hey, you gotta walk right here. This is the direction you're going. So once these two things happen, everything lines up, you're good to go, or some things come up. So again, this is really important because then you start finding out your left and right lateral limits. You find out like what's possible, right? And this step right here is very important because if you never did this, the lender would have not found out about the credit issue. And let's say on that for a little bit. But with the credit issue, we talked, we got to the lender now. You're getting pre-approved. They find out like, hey, I can pre-approve you, but not for what you want because of whatever the situation. You got, bad credit. There's something negative on your credit history, or with the income that you make and the savings that you have. This is what's you're available. And say you hit that one roadblock, right? Let's make it simple. You got low credit. You can still get qualified. Don't get discouraged with me already saying that, bad credit, it's or low credit is bad and you're not gonna be able to do it. Check it out first. But for this scenario, say with this credit score, this is gonna trickle down to a bunch of other things that you might not like. And if you don't like it, well, guess what? You figured that out by doing step one and step two, where if you never did it, you would have never found that issue out. And that gives you more time and puts you ahead of other people that still haven't done anything yet. And they don't realize that they have that one discrepancy where now you know. And there's a couple ways, either myself or somebody else, I can reach out with this because we deal with this all the time. Where if somebody has bad credit and you're trying to fix it so you can move forward, there's other people that we can connect you with that will help you repair your credit faster than you doing it, the just the way, slowly fixing your credit on your own. Why? Because the more time that passes by, like in the last video, prices don't stop. They go up. They do go down, but generally they head in an upwards direction. And within that time frame, while you were ready in that moment, ready to go, but it was just that credit issue, you let more time pass by, where maybe you would have been in a better position at that time if you just addressed it early on. And say if there's any other issues, like the lease situation again, you never thought about the lease, how that would affect you in your home buying process. When you start looking at that, you're like, oh, okay, I got a 6 month lease. So let's start preparing from now until the next 6 months or so to get everything in place. So once that time frame hits, you're ready to go. Or we've been working on it for a while and we've already answered everything. We've been keeping an eye on the market. We've gone doing some showings in the meantime. And we saw, now you start understanding the market when you go on the showings. But it starts giving you, a realistic idea like, hey, for this price range, in the location that I'm looking for, this is what's available. This is what I keep seeing. So I guess this is what the market out there for this scenario that fits me looks like. So now you start understanding like, hey, I thought I was able to get this, but instead I'm able to get this, and actually this is like the top of the top notch, compared for that city, for that price range, for that you start understanding the market better. So knowing this early is better than guessing for years. And then at least now let's go on to step three. So once you talk to a real estate agent, loan officer, you get pre-approved, you figured out like what's possible, what's not possible, what challenges, what roadblocks you're onto, and you fix them all, and or maybe there was no challenges to begin with, and you're just gliding through this whole process. You go on to step three. So step three, now that you know all these things, now that you fixed everything, or like I said, everything was perfect, then you start doing the home search. That's when we find out what you're qualified for, what location you're looking at, uh, what criteria you're looking for specifically, whether it's one story, 2 stories, pool, no pool, driveway, garage, whatever, right? And then you start looking around, and then we start looking at properties and neighborhoods that you like. And then that's when you start realizing, oh, this is HOA. This is the difference between an HOA property and not a non-HOA property. And that's where then you have to decide, like, hey, I do like the HOA properties, but they come at a cost. And you didn't realize, hey, this specific neighborhood is what I'm gonna be paying monthly for my mortgage, plus another 500, another 600, 700. And then that's where you had to decide, hey, you want a property with HOA or with no HOA? Here's the pros and cons, and what will you be happy with in the end? Like, are you okay paying this HOA? Are you not? Do you prefer not to pay HOA, but this is what you're gonna get? Or now that we're shopping, we saw an opportunity, and from my point of view, for me recommending it to you, I was like, hey, for this neighborhood, for this price, this is the best you'll. This is the best property. You're gonna get more bang for your buck for this property. And we started looking, all right, you start understanding kind of how the works during the shopping process, and you start realizing, oh wow, I like this house, but it only stayed on the market for like a week. That went by fast. And then that again, if you didn't take step one to where you're at right now, these are all like learning lessons that you're gonna know. We already know this, and we recommend the best choice for you and what we know that you want. But it also, what I've seen and observed is, no matter how much we recommend, and I'm pretty sure you guys know too, if you don't do it personally, if somebody tells you like, hey, you should better be doing this is a good choice, do it. I recommend you doing this from somebody else, like relatives, friends, big brother, mom and dad, like, hey, do this. This is good for you in your future. And you don't listen, and then you go back looking at it like, oh wow, I should have done that, right? So for us, we're not forcing you, we're not doing anything to make you, like what you or like something that you don't like. But what we are trying to tell you is like, hey, this is the best decision for your situation, for your what you're looking for. I recommend this. And that's your choice then to say, I don't like it. Let's move on. I was like, okay, I can't force you to like something that you don't like. Can't force you to do anything. I'm here though to advise you and make sure that you're set up for success. So now at this point, we found a property, right? You like it. It matches, it fits your price range, it fits your monthly payments that you're thinking about, it fits the neighborhood, the location, the HOA, not HOA, everything, right? It's a perfect house. You like it. After we seen it, you seen it, this is the point where we then make an offer, and this is like step four. So step four is when we make an offer. And this is the part where when you submit an offer, it's not as simple. Well, I wouldn't say it's not as simple, but I would say it's easy to submit an offer. But for you, and depending on the situation, if there's multiple people trying to also submit an offer on this, you're going to have to work on terms, negotiating terms. And then this is going to include the terms like, hey, this is a price range, this is a timeline, this is the terms. The seller then can either accept that, counter it, or decline. Both within this, we have to also consider the seller side, what they're looking for, and you already know what you're looking for. So for me as a real estate agent, this is a part where I am mainly and mostly involved. I would say this is like the most important part. Why? Because this is the one that gets you in the home. This is like the step that opens escrow and starts getting it. Well, this is where it starts getting real, right? So within your offer, you start submitting an offer. We can say like, hey, we want this house at 650. We want it in 31 days from once everything's accepted, and we need credits, we need this, we need that. And then they can look at it and they say, yes, I like it. No, I don't like it. The seller might be in a position where they have to sell this faster. Why? Because they probably bought another house somewhere and they don't want to keep making the payment on this and they don't want to be making a payment on that. So they're making double payments on a house, so they want to sell this sooner than later. Or sometimes they don't care. Or they're trying to sell this and their time frame is not working out. So they're like, hey, we stay a little longer? Can we extend this instead of 31 days to like 38 days? And this is where we start actually figuring out what's on the seller side, what's on the buyer side, meet in the middle, and agree on terms. And if everything's good, then they accept. And now this is the part where escrow opens. So you guys heard me talk about earnest money deposit, EMD, before. This is the part where everybody doesn't hear about this or never heard about this, and they don't know that this money is something that they have to bring to the table. So earnest money deposit, EMD, is a deposit. It is not a fee. This shows that you're serious and it helps move the transaction forward. This money is going to be held within escrow. It applies towards closing costs. And if everything went well and you got negotiated, you will get this money back. Not guaranteed, but if within negotiations, within the contract, and how the numbers went through, you will get this back. Or if there was some costs that need to get paid from closing costs, this is where this money will then be applied to. So now let's look at once escrow's open within the contract, there was a portion or a part where there's a couple things. There's the home inspections, there's some other contingencies, but let's just go over the main one, right? The big one. And the one that I'd prefer to talk more about, but it's the home inspection. So once you open escrow, you have a certain time to go then do a home inspection. This is where money out of pocket happens. Depending on your area, it could be from like 300, 500, 600 bucks, whatever. But this is where you'll have to have money prepared because this is a service that you have to get for yourself, that you're buying a house during this time frame. You told the seller, hey, let me inspect this house, let me look at this house and see if that it works or that it's fine, that it's ready for me to move on. And I wouldn't say this is a friction point between the buyer and seller, but this is something where you have to, I would say this is a part where it's gonna be determined if you really want this house and if you really love it. This is where some of the issues that you find within the house is identified, and if you're okay with that, then bigger picture, you want this house, some stuff will be minor compared to some other major issues. Here's an example. So we get to inspection, the house is cool, you like it, but it's not as clean as you want it to be, right? So within us sending request repairs, we just told them, hey, can you do a deep cleaning? I want to be upfront about this and let you know that the seller does not have to say yes. They don't have to. So they can either say yes or no, but they're not obligated to do it. So let's stick with the minor issue, right? So within the minor issue, I want the house deep cleaned before you give it to me. There's here. So it's either going to be like the seller says, okay, yeah, that's fine. He's going to pay out of pocket. He's going to get it cleaned and it's going to give it to you. And then there we're good to go. Or he can say no. You just straight up say no. He doesn't have to say yes. And that's a minor issue, but that's where the buyer, then yourself, would have to come into the point of making the decision. Yes, I'm okay if it doesn't get deep cleaned. I'll still take the house. That's I want it more than deep cleaning is not a big deal. Or I want this deep cleaning no matter what. That could be a point or a friction point, a roadblock within this whole thing where the seller was like, okay, I'm not gonna do it. So then you guys fall out of escrow and that's it. Go back to the last step, which is doing the home search and waiting to put another offer in and getting it to this point again. Or let's go to a bigger scenario. Let's go to a major issue. So whenever you're buying a home, the purpose of the general home inspection is for you to identify all the problems and bring it up. And if it needs to get fixed, it needs to get fixed. With the minor issues, like you're requesting them, you want them. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But we're gonna fight for what you want, right? But with the major issues, here's an example. So you want to buy a home, you get the general home inspector. Again, a general home inspector is exactly what it sounds like. They just do general inspections. They're not specialists in plumbing and roofing and all this stuff, right? They do a general inspection. So again, you get a general home inspector. This pays paid out of pocket for you making sure and doing your due diligence that you're getting a house. You're doing your own inspection. They say, hey, they look at this roof. This roof only has maybe 2, 3 years left. And I'm not sure if you guys know, but as of right now, in recent events, when this topic came up, it was from $15,000 to $20,000 to get the roof replaced. That's a lot. And especially if you're already coming in buying a home, it's already gonna, you know, feel expensive depending if you're gonna do down payments, these inspections, the EMD, and like future cost. If you have already furniture, then that's great. If you already have all these stuff, it's good. But sometimes people just like all the money that they were gonna use, they use it during the transaction, or during that transaction they still had they had a still good amount chunk where they're like, oh, like now I need a sofa, now I need a bed, now I need a fridge, microwave, a TV, all this stuff, all these appliances and furniture that you'd want now that you're a homeowner. So adding that on top of like the home repair within a year or two is something that you don't want, right? And also, this is something that does need to get addressed. And this is where you're gonna see both scenarios as a buyer and a seller. So the buyer side, that's the issue. Like you don't want to deal with this bill of $15,000 to $20,000 in the future, right? And when the seller knows about this and we let them know, like, hey, look, this only has a couple years left. Well, they're also gonna be on a crossroad. Either they're gonna repair it, or they're gonna say like, nope, I'm not gonna repair it. I don't want to, pay that bill either. Take it as is. Then that's your decision. But for the most part, this is something that needs to get addressed during the appraisal issue. When it gets appraised and then they see that there's a roof issue, it needs to get fixed for the home, because nobody wants to the lender does not want to purchase something that is not passing quality checks in a way, just for me to say that. So let me put you in the shoes of the seller. The seller is either gonna say, they can be stubborn about it and say like, no, fall out of escrow, and then guess what? They're gonna go back on the market. Depending on their situation, they're either gonna, be longer in the market, keep paying that mortgage payment, and nobody's gonna buy it, or they're gonna find another buyer. They're gonna get in the contract. They're gonna go to the same thing, and they're gonna run into the same issue. So they have two things: either they'd rather deal with it again over and over again, spend more time there, or they're gonna address it then and there because they know they don't want to deal with it later, and they it's gonna need to be addressed. So that's what happens during the general home inspection. And those are just two scenarios. This is something like is this like I said, this video is more for you to understand the process from step one, like you reaching out to a person in the real estate space, either a loan officer or real estate agent, getting pre-qualified and now finding out like what you're good to go with. Like now what's good for you. You find out what the market's like. You find out what you like, what you don't like, and then you find something that you like. You submit an offer. You submit the offer. That's where the EMD comes in. That's when you start opening escrow, and then that's when you start doing your due diligence, where you then get your home inspection done. And those are a couple scenarios that can happen. I don't want to scare you. I don't want to put like all these things in your head. This is for you to be more confident in what you're walking in and what to expect, because there's some times when people start talking to somebody, they get pre-approved and everything, they're ready to go, but then they start realizing that they could get cold feet. They don't like what they see in the market, or I don't know. It's just they get to those couple steps and then they go back to renting and leasing. But when all that's said and done, and when you're done with the home inspection, you go through all your contingencies, then you close within the time frame that was agreed on the contract. That's it. You're a homeowner. It's as simple as those a couple steps to kind of compress it all. Because the reason I said, like I said in the very beginning, everybody asks me about all this. Oh, I want to buy a house. I want to buy a house, and everybody's asking me all these questions. But all these questions, they do follow the same steps. They do follow the same track and direction, but they're not all the same. And those are just like kind of like bigger points to do it. But back to the very beginning, you won't know all these steps. You won't even know what's going to happen during, you don't know the house you're going to get. You don't know what's going to happen during the inspection. You don't know how the offer has to get structured. You won't be able to home shop if you don't know what you're pre-qualified for. You won't know if you're going to like what you like or you don't like when looking for homes. You won't know what you get qualified for if you don't start with step one, which is reaching out to somebody and starting this process. So, my biggest recommendation for everybody that's thinking about buying a home in 2026, everybody that wants to buy a home, don't wait, reach out, get informed. With just doing that, it's going to get you closer to being a homeowner.